Hello and welcome to etbfsi.com. My name is Amol Dete and I'm in conversation with Rajni Thakur from RBL Bank. Ms. Thakur, glad to have you here.
Pleasure, Amal. Happy to be
Uh,
here.
Thank you so much. So to begin with, there are two, three important things that I would like to discuss here in this particular show. One is about the GDP, second is about the economy and the overall, the growth, the fiscal deficit of India, and what kind of growth do we see. To start with, specifically about the GDP, with 1.6% growth in this quarter, you know, how do you see the coming quarters? I mean, everybody is talking about the rebound of the growth. Everybody is talking about, how India has been improving. But do you see the challenges specifically in the coming quarters, or you see this will continue in the next quarter as well?
I'm very happy you asked this question because I actually have a very nuanced view to this. I think near term, there is a strong momentum, and last night's data has actually helped in kind of ascertaining that strong momentum. And beyond the pre-COVID, post-COVID comparison term, when we move to a 2 to 5 year, is where we really see a hit on the growth outlook. So I'll just explain to you how. Q4 data kind of tells you the kind potential you would have if the lockdowns are not in place. So medical emergencies apart, if we are kind of getting onto an unlock phase gradually starting June, so first quarter gets hit, hopefully that kind of rebounds the way it did last year, and then it kind of makes up in the remaining quarters of this year. So fiscal year 22, I really don't see a major challenge, and most of the growth expectation is based on a couple of premises. A, lower base that stays on track. Government expenditure, again, that pretty much stays on track with or without the second wave or third wave, or rather gets stronger if there are more intense waves of the pandemic. Global backdrop that continues to remain strong and hopefully will remain through the year. And a big part of it is normalization of activities, which did get delayed from this quarter on to next or maybe third quarter. But that still is a story that yet to play out. So, what we've seen in Q4 numbers is normalization of manufacturing or industry side, construction output kind of outgrew most of the other sectors. We are yet to see services output catch up to pre-COVID levels. So short term, we have a huge upside built in. It's when we move beyond the pre-COVID, post-COVID, hopefully in the next fiscal year, is where we really see the income effect, the hit on employment and consumption numbers to play out. And by then, government would have kind of stretched out on its fiscal push as well. So that is where we see a big hit. When we pre-COVID, we were looking at a 7% kind of a medium-term growth outlook. By the time first wave crossed, we were at a 6.5. Now, after second wave, our current calculations put it down to a 6.3. And, more such permanent scars on the economy, we could probably look at a lower and lower potential growth in the medium term. But short term, there are many factors which are pretty much stay on track despite a humanitarian cost of second wave. And that should give us an upside for now.
Okay, I think a great overview here, Ms. Thakur, specifically about the short term and the long term. But if I speak specifically about the rebound, or revival or the recovery, we have seen the 7.6% of contraction. So what, according to you, obviously you clarified and elaborated what you could see in terms of the challenges and also the changes. But what, according to you, will make economy rebound going ahead?
There is one and only one factor, and that's government expenditure. And that's something that has been true for the rest of the world. With the pandemic so intense, hitting all across the economy, there is only one agent that has to front load, be it consumption, investment, and that's government. We've been talking about it all through the pandemic. With Q4 data, now we have a clear indication that government is willing to and is actually front loading expenditure as well. So that will be the key in this year. If we stay on track for the kind of 24% growth rate in government expenditure that we saw last quarter, then that should push the cycle onto the private cycle as well by the time this year is over. So for now, it's government expenditure and easy financial conditions, both of which seem to be in place for now.
Yeah, so my question to you now is specifically about the government. So when we speak specifically about the government should take more initiatives and think about the consumption and boost the demand, are there any key points that comes to your mind that these are the things that maybe if government does, it would be better for the economy? So, what is your wish list, or what do you think are the key points that the government should look at to boost the consumption and the demand specifically?
So last year, when we were at the depth of this pandemic, I think that's when we economists were making most loudest call for fiscal impulse, and government was of the opinion that they want to impart fiscal impulse at a time when activities are picking up, when they unlock, and it did turn out to be a good strategy when we look at last fiscal year. So you really see a material pickup in government expenditure only in Q4. Considering that, most likely pace for government expenditure would be when things start opening up. So probably Q1 again, we will look at a lower government expenditure, but Q2 on, it should start picking up. In terms of what projects, what reforms, I think they have been in place for quite some time. Those pieces are coming together, and with PLI, with lots of these incentives, lots of reforms coming together. I think it's a slow nudge. It's in terms of pushing the private sector to take off, but that's not something that happens in a hurry. It will probably take 4 to 6 quarters. Till then, if government can front load the way it did in Q4, then we should be on good track of recovery.
Okay. But, on the government part, I have, one more question specifically when we speak about the government spending. So government has already, made this 20 lakh crore, and, the RBI has also supported that. So my question to you is, if government wants to add more funds to it, considering the fiscal deficit numbers, we have already accepted more than 9%, what is the scope that government actually has? And will government have many challenges going ahead if they wants to spend more?
Let's face it, the fiscal space as it is not very wide. I mean, only because they have managed to extend the FRBM limits do we have the fiscal space in the current year. And to kind of give credibility to the post-pandemic recovery efforts and to get the kind of flows we want from external sector, we would need to outlay very clearly on how we expect to get back to the fiscal deficit path. So in that sense, we have a limited time and pace within which government can act. But for that, it has created ample space with the extension of FRBM limits. So that is there for now. How does it choose to spend? Does it go in capex creation? The thought process seems to be in terms of quick gains. So you see lots of expenditure coming in road or airports in tier 3 cities, or where you can just spend and get the quintessential textbook Keynesian theory where you spend and you expect the money to kind of flow in. So that's likely to continue. And that doesn't move the needle much in terms of medium term. So my worry is that, unless capex from government side also increases, that's something that would be a short-term gain. But for now, there seems to be a policy focus on short-term spending or quick spending or low-hanging fruits in terms of getting the fiscal impulse onto the economy, which could prove to be correct in certain ways.
Okay. So obviously, compared to many other countries, the numbers still look far more optimistic. In fact, the GST collection is also quite positive in that manner. But when we speak to India Inc., there are a lot of complaints specifically about the fundraising. There are many companies who still believe that the banks are risk averse. Banks are not actually disbursing or sanctioning loans on time specifically. And unless that happens, the growth will not come back or recovery will not come back. So what is the reality in terms of the banking side? Are the bankers actually risk averse, or are they just being very cautious about particular sectors? What is your reading there?
So we've been speaking about it for quite some time. I think we are in a phase. My reading of the situation is post 2013, we really don't have much of private investment cycle coming up, So when we don't see fresh capex coming in, typically in an economy across the globe, you see it translating onto balance sheet stress. And that's what we saw before the pandemic. It has in an economy as well, stress on the corporate balance sheet, then stress on the banking balance sheet, then government coming forward and helping them. That is a right mixture for risk averseness across the economy. All the economic agents running risk averse before pandemic happened, actually. It's just the pent up that's giving us the number. Otherwise, the corporates running risk averse, no fresh capex coming in, capacity utilization levels below 65%. If there are no fresh capex coming in, then the fresh credit is more or less kind of recycling of credit. So you'll find financial sector also getting very, very cautious in terms of where it's lending and what's the kind of risk that they're taking. And then government needs to back up in terms of anything that could potentially become more systemic. So that's something that becomes a chicken and egg story. It's difficult to say that financial sector is risk averse and hence we are not investing, or the investments are not coming forward and hence financial sector is turning risk averse. So that's a difficult cycle to put a point on, but that's the cycle that's been active in Indian case for, I think, good 5 years now. And the only economic agent again that can break this is government, kind of bring in that confidence, front load it, and then the private sector impulse takes away. Till we see capacity utilization numbers really materially moving forward, there's no reason for private sector to come forward, So that's a demand issue. That's what RBI has been mentioning as well, that if anything, a long-term hit is coming from the demand side, and that's something we need to take care of. Make sure that we get the kind of income growth and demand growth that would sustain the private cycle taking this forward. We already have over 3 years where government has front-loaded growth impulse.
Interesting. Copy that. The government has launched this, emergency credit lending guarantee scheme, and in fact, they have, increased the scope as well. In fact, they have given a lot of guarantees to the borrowers, specifically from the health sector. Do you think these are really helpful for the SMEs and the MSMEs? Part number one. And, what extent do you think that this government scheme has actually able to manage or generate the demand in last couple of quarters?
Again, as an economist, I look more from the fundamental side rather than on financial or banking sector side. But when you look at stress time, any period of stress typically has two sides. A, it suppresses demand levels because consumers are running risk averse again. B, good running businesses go under because it's stress time and they don't get enough credit line, and they can't kind of manage the working capital cycle. So the second part of it is taken care of by this emergency credit line. And if you notice, most of them have been focused on the most stressed sectors. Gradually, these stressed sectors have been identified and provided. So to that extent, it's really helping. The kind of offtake we've seen in the market, it's really helping. Does it help on the demand side to kind of generate enough demand? That's a very slow process. So that's not something that will give you a quick gain. There, I think direct fiscal impulse in terms of maybe Manrega work hours or road projects, releasing government dues, those are the things that are much more effective than a credit guarantee scheme, really. But it works very well on the enterprise side, which could have financial difficulties in these stress times. So keeping them afloat is something that they do well.
Okay, so I know this particular question is not a direct question about the current situation, but if we take a overall view of maybe next 3 to 4 years, many countries have been, what you can say, quite confident on India. In fact, even the GDP number shows that FDI investment is really high. How do you see FDI investments going ahead in India, maybe in next 2 to 3 years? How do you see India, becoming the far more aggressive space in terms of the foreign investments? Do we still have that capacity to now, what you can say, extract investments from foreign investors, whatever happened with Make in India and Made in India in last couple of years? And do you see a major scope for India going ahead? Or do you see at one side that we will still have a lot of issues to settle because the vaccination drive is still not, in full speed, and maybe we will ourselves take maybe 1.5 years to do that? So how do you see the whole scenario in next 2 to 3 years, specifically for India's growth?
My one sentence answer to this is that the world has no option but to look at India. If you look at, because when you are an investor sitting with ample liquidity that has been pushed by the global central banks, you start looking at markets and yields and chase and safety. The one market that comes at the top is India. So, we're back to a 2017 kind of situation where our fundamentals might be shaky, but for foreign investors, there are not many options when you look at it from an outsider's perspective. But to answer your question in detail, I think a large part of that comes from the demand level expectations. And if we do manage to keep our growth story on track, and it's very, very important to make sure that the world at large, the investors community, the domestic economic agents do believe in the India growth story. If that stays on track, then we have continued flow of FDI, FIIs. There's lots of, again, liquidity in the global market that will flow through it. So the asset markets also keep gaining, very rare times when both the bonds and the equities are growing together, So that's the kind of situation that comes both because there is a stimulus on the global side, but also because when those funds are looking for destination, then India is one market that kind of comes up at the top. There are not many markets that compare. The EM peers that we have, there are different issues, and we could get on to what is South Africa facing, what is Malaysia coming, where does Philippines stand, where is Latin America. So if you kind of start comparing among them, then India emerges as one of the safest destinations. So again, not the world doesn't have many options but for India. And I think that has brought in lots of economic confidence in our policymakers as well. If you see the kind of regulatory changes, the kind of demand from global players, be it tech players or consumption-oriented players, that's just growing by day. That's very heartening to see that as an economy, we have that economic confidence getting in that the world has. Even in vaccination, till the world supports us, I think nobody is safe. And when I mean it in a very positive way, that it is at the end of it a large part of global population and a large part of global economic activity. So frontier by size, by growth, and I have this whole metrics that I track in terms of the size of the economy and the growth. If you put those two metrics together, then India kind of appears at the top. Then this is the destination, and rest everything is more noise, is short term, but has to fall in place.
Okay, sounds good. In fact, it's nice to listen that the world doesn't have any option but India. One more and a last question specifically. So, considering all that we discussed, and how far are we now from $5 trillion economy? I know it's not the right time to ask this question, but still, I will take your views or maybe some perspective here.
That's a tricky call at this point of time, and it has considerably been delayed by the pandemic. And I mean, our expectation for even next year kind of ranges between a 9% to an 11%. We really don't know how it turns out. I would put it at anything between 3 to 5 years. 5 years probably that we're away from 5 trillion economy.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much for your meaningful thoughts. Thank you so much for talking to TBFSI.com.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching.